keep pretending. I'm a person that has across social media 10 million followers. And when you start getting desperate because you can't actually pull something that I've said, you start going, well, what do you think about this account? And this person has also said this, and this person likes you. If you did that and I was then accountable for the words that every single person that followed me said, there's no way you can survive that. I could do that right now to you. I could have had my producers look at this person who follows Don Lemon. They've said something against Black people. So Don Lemon, it's like, that's a ridiculous thing to say. But to the extent that you ask me, and this has happened before, as Piers Morgan did, he said, this is some things that Nick Fuentes have said. Do you agree with it? And I said, no, I don't agree with that. Yeah. Hold me accountable for what I actually said.
Welcome back to another fiery debate. Watch how Candace remains calm and stands on business. Don Lemon tries to bring up Candace Owens' split from the Daily Wire in 2024, which followed growing tensions with co-founder Ben Shapiro and backlash over her comments on the Israel-Hamas war, with critics accusing her of crossing into anti-Semitic rhetoric. To be fair, Candace wasn't always in this position. She previously moved in strongly pro-Israel conservative circles, working with PragerU and alongside figures like Charlie Kirk. But in this exchange, she stands firm on her current stance, criticizing the Israeli government, especially over civilian deaths in Gaza, does strong not equal anti-Semitism. And she repeatedly separates Judaism, a religion, from Zionism/Israel, a state and political project. Her core argument is simple. People should be able to condemn harm to innocent civilians, whether Muslim, Jewish, or Christian, without being automatically labeled anti-Semitic.
What happened with you at the Daily Wire because of your stance on what's happening in Israel and Gaza, and what you just explained. My question to you is, because people think that you are you anti-Semitic?
No, I'm not anti-Semitic.
Go on.
Go on with what? You asked me a question, I answered it. Yeah. Christian, kids being bombed is upsetting to me, and I have a right to say that without being called an anti-Semite. And if you want to call me an anti-Semite for it, I simply don't care.
I'm not calling you an anti-Semite. I'm at, because people call you that, and I think, look, if you there's the whole talk about Zionism and anti-Semitism and whatever. I think it's a conversation that you just can't win. But I would like for you to be able to explain yourself, because
Judaism is not Zionism, and it doesn't matter how many people insist that it is. It's just not. It's a political party, and it puts the interests of Israel above everything else. I grew up with Jewish people. Jewish people are my best friends. This is the nation of Israel is not Judaism. It's a nonsense. And when you start getting desperate because you can't actually pull something that I've said, you start going, well, what do you think about this account? And this person has also said this, and this person likes you. If you did that and I was then accountable for the words that every single person that followed me said, there's no way you can survive that.
Honestly, Candace Owens made her point pretty clearly in that exchange. But what really stood out to me was the last part of the interview with Don Lemon, especially when he started talking about God. That part felt kinda wild to me and took the conversation in a different direction. So I'm curious what people think about that segment. Do you agree with what Don said, or did it go too far?
Scared. I don't fear anything but God. That's it.
Yeah. Well, I don't think God is to be feared, but anyways, I'm just surprised that you don't have any gay friends, because that, I just am. So listen, when what happened with you was a Daily Wire, right? Is that the network you're on? What happened with you at the Daily Wire because of your stance on what's happening in Israel and Gaza, and what you just explained. My question to you is, because people think that you are you anti-Semitic?
No, I'm not anti-Semitic.
Go on.
Go on with what? You asked me a question, I answered it.
You said
I don't need to launch into defense of myself, because I'm just not anti-Semitic. There's nothing that I hear that I need to add. I guess today anti-Semitism, the definition keeps expanding, and now I guess it means if you don't fall over yourself every time Bibi Netanyahu speaks, they're just going to call you an anti-Semite. Nope, I'm a Christian. Kids being bombed is upsetting to me, and I have a right to say that without being called an anti-Semite. And if you want to call me an anti-Semite for it, I simply don't care.
I'm not calling you an anti-Semite. I'm at, because people call you that, and I think, look, if you there's the whole talk about Zionism and anti-Semitism and whatever. I think it's a conversation that you just can't win. But I would like for you to be able to explain yourself, because
Judaism is not Zionism, and it doesn't matter how many people insist that it is. It's just not. It's a political party, and it puts the interests of Israel above everything else. I grew up with Jewish people. Jewish people are my best friends. This is the nation of Israel is not Judaism. It's a nonsense to suggest that we can critique, as we did earlier, talking about Joe Biden, that we can critique our own president and nobody cares, because we should. You should be able to hold leaders and their decisions and their feet to the fire. And then to say that if you do the exact same thing over what Bibi Netanyahu's actions are, then you're somehow anti-Semitic.
Okay, I understand that, and I don't disagree. I think you can criticize and analyze the actions of the Israeli government, the IDF, and also Bibi Netanyahu. But to say that, listen, I'm not anti-Semitic because I have Jewish friends, it's kind of like saying I have black friends. I don't think that actually helps your argument, Candace.
No, I didn't say that. What I was saying is that I have Jewish friends. Judaism is not Zionism, as in I have friends who are Jewish who don't support what's happening overseas.
Okay.
Judaism is not Zionism. They don't stop being Jewish because they disagree with what Bibi Netanyahu is doing.
Okay, you say that you're not anti-Semitic, but I can't tell you what's in your heart. I believe you. You said that you're not anti-Semitic. You don't believe that you're anti-Semitic. But there are anti-Semites and neo-Nazis. They do love you. And I want to play this clip. This is from Nick Fuentes, his show just this week. Watch this.
One other big development, Candace Owens did a show today. She did her show, and she talked about my beef with Jordan Peterson. And so I really appreciate her covering it. We love Candace Owens. She's beautiful, she's very intelligent, and she is really hardcore. She's been going off.
Does that bother you that, and that's the whole reason I said, it looks this way, and maybe that's not your intention, as you said, but it looks this way, like you're saying, hey, don't look at what happened with the Holocaust, look over here. But if you have people like Nick Fuentes who said, hey, we love you, whatever, maybe your message isn't hitting correctly. What do you think of Fuentes saying
well,
that?
now you're just conflating.
His neo-Nazi audience love you.
Sure. So now you're just conflating things because you're still kind of trying to sell this narrative that this somehow is about Jewish people. What Nick Fuentes is talking about, which this is the first time I'm seeing it because I don't watch Nick Fuentes nearly as much as apparently everybody in the mainstream media does.
In this exchange, Don Lemon tries to press Candace Owens by bringing up people like Nick Fuentes, but it comes off like a weak line of questioning, almost like he's trying to box her into a corner by implying guilt by association, which isn't really fair. Because just because someone supports you doesn't mean you agree with everything they say. Instead of focusing on that, he could have pushed more on the actual issue, her views on Israel and civilians. So it ends up feeling like he's stuck on small details rather than the bigger picture. And in the end, Candace doesn't really take the bait and sticks to her main argument.
What he's talking about is what I covered on my show as a news item, which was Jordan Peterson and him having a back and forth. Or Michaela, Dr. Jordan Peterson is, by the way, very lovely, a very kind person, but it was a very newsworthy item when Michaela and Peterson, being his daughter, called for censorship, called for straight up censorship. She's like, we need to have censorship, anybody that uses the term filth. And it was a back forth between her and Nick Fuentes because he responded and he said, your father literally called me a rat last week. This was a trending item on Twitter. I covered it on my show. To the extent that Nick Fuentes enjoyed the fact that I covered it in a meaningful capacity, because it is problematic when anybody calls for censorship. I don't care if the person's on the left or the person's on the right. You will make an enemy of me because I support the First Amendment and I believe that we have to have free speech. What can I say about that? It's an absurd thing for people to keep pretending. I'm a person that has, across social media, 10 million followers. And when you start getting desperate because you can't actually pull something that I've said, you start going, well, what do you think about this account? And this person has also said this, and this person likes you. If you did that, and I was then accountable for the words that every single person that followed me said, there's no way you can survive that. I could do that right now to you. I could have had my producers look at this person who follows Don Lemon. They've said something against Black people. So Don Lemon, it's like, that's a ridiculous thing to say. But to the extent that you ask me, and this has happened before, as Piers Morgan did, he said, this is some things that Nick Fuentes have said. Do you agree with it? And I said, no, I don't agree with that. Yeah. Hold me accountable for what I actually said.
Well, that was the reason I asked you about it. Because
but so I don't agree. Don't you showed me. I'm not.
This is not a gotcha. I'm asking you.
But that is such a gotcha. That is such a gotcha to say it's nothing that you said. But let me show you this person who likes you. Because what you're trying to do is play this strategy with the public, so they watch it and they go, "Well, she must be saying all sorts of things if this person likes her." Most people do like if you're going to say something on their show and you're showing the back forth that he's obviously going to say, "Look, Candace covered this issue in a way that's consistent with the beliefs of the First Amendment. So he may say something that I fundamentally disagree with. But if Nick Fuentes says 1 + 1 = 2, and I agree with that, that doesn't mean that I subscribe to everything Nick Fuentes says. If Nick Fuentes says only women can give birth, and I agree with that, you then go, oh, look, Nick Fuentes is celebrating you because you said only women can give birth. I mean, this is you're smarter than this, Don. You're in the public sphere. You know we cannot be beholden or responsible for every comment that is made by people who support us and follow us.
Well, that's why I put it up there, because if someone like Nick Fuentes was saying good things about some of the things that I believed or what I said, that would actually be problematic for me. And I would want to respond to that. I would welcome the opportunity for Candace Owens to play that clip on her show so that I could knock it down and say, I don't believe in anything Nick Fuentes or any of his followers or viewers or whatever. I don't understand why they are happy with what I said, but this is what I believe, and this is the context.
I do believe that it is problematic that Michaela Peterson called for censorship. So I can't knock that down. I can't say, like, what do you want me to say on the show? Well, because Nick Fuentes agrees with that perspective, I'm now anti-speech. That doesn't, I believe in free speech. I believe that what Michaela Peterson said was wrong. I genuinely believe that.
Okay.
Like, you can't just call for censorship.
At this point, Candace Owens really pushes back hard, calling it a straight-up gotcha from Don Lemon. She argues he's trying to influence the audience by showing that someone like Nick Fuentes supports her. So viewers assume she must agree with everything he says, which she says is ridiculous, making the point that you can agree with someone on one issue without endorsing their entire worldview. Don fires back, saying if someone like Fuentes praised him, he'd distance himself and clarify his position, arguing public figures should address that kind of support. But Candace sticks to her ground, saying that logic is flawed and would make anyone responsible for every random supporter online, turning this into a direct clash between you must disavow versus you're not responsible. If you watch the full interview on Don's channel, a lot of the comments are actually roasting him and praising Candace for her composure. I didn't include that in the video. But there's also a moment where Don compares views on same-sex marriage being sinful to Candace marrying a white man, which Candace challenges by asking for a Bible verse. And Don responds that he doesn't want to get into specifics. I don't agree with a lot of Candace's views, but in this exchange, she handled herself pretty well,